Hello and welcome back. So if you'll notice, this is not a gameplay today. Decided to go with the deck tech for the Vendilion Clique. I know my last couple uploads have been Yisan, but I've been enjoying the Vendilion Clique playing. It's just I haven't had any very decent gameplays with it that are worthy of being recorded and entertaining enough, I feel, to put up for you guys. So I figured I would give you guys a good deck tech for this, and I'll probably do Yisan in the coming day or so. So that way you can have a full list. This is a nearly complete list in my opinion. I'm only missing a couple of the key cards at the moment, just because their MTGO price tag is a little too high for what I want to pay for this. So right now I think this deck is coming in around 45 to 50 tickets at the top end. There's very few things that are expensive. Winter Orb being released drops the price way down because the previous Winter Orb was like a 9 ticket card. I think this one's 3. Like Mana Crypt is cheap, Top is cheap. A lot of these cards on MTG are very inexpensive, which is quite nice. Like with the deck itself, you're definitely underneath a 50 ticket budget. The biggest price of the entire deck is Vendilion Clique at the helm at approximately 20 tickets, I believe, right now at the time of this recording, give or take a couple tickets. I did a lot of the trade-ins off the default Moto bonuses and picked up most of these cards as just random bulk rares and stuff. Things like Psionic Blast, Rewind. A lot of these are just bulk cards. So we'll start with the mana base. I have it over here. You'll notice I have a few columns for I have 2 columns for the 2 mana and 2 for the lands. I wanted to make the cards as big as possible. I record on an ultra wide screen, which is 21 by 9. So the ratio doesn't work out quite perfect for YouTube. So I wanted to make sure the cards are as big as possible. I know I'm always recording in 1080p as well, but anything to help you guys out. So, land base, just 29 basic islands. Uh, the obvious upgrade to this deck would be adding in the 4 fetches that I can have in these colors, and putting Brainstorm in the 1 drops. I definitely would not include Brainstorm without including the fetches, though, just because you Brainstorm like yourself quite easily. I'd rather have something that shuffles like Ponder. So 29 basic islands, and you guys recognize my sweet John Avon 7th edition islands. So, and then 8 non-basics. So they each serve different purpose. Talaria West can fetch up my Mana Crypt, my Chalice, or one of the other non-basics mostly. A lot of time you'll see me playing, I'm usually getting Crypt with it because it's a 3 mana. It essentially becomes Fabricate for specifically Crypt because it's blue blue 1 and Fabricate over here is blue 2, and the usual Fabricate target could be Mana Crypt. So it essentially doubles as a second copy of that if I'm going to get Mana Crypt. But Strip Mine and Riptide are 2 of my other favorites to get so far. Blight Cataract, I'm sure you've seen me use a couple times. The deck really wants a lot of blue mana, but the concession of having a land that produces colorless in exchange for just being able to turn that 1 card into 2 later on in the game when you're trying to close it out as quickly as possible is a huge benefit. And I like having a land that, if my hand's empty and I don't have anything to do, it's something, or if I don't have a draw spell and I'm holding on to mana for counter magic, I have something to do on an opponent's end step. Thawing Glaciers, like I've said before, is a very powerful card. If you're familiar with Brian Weissman's channel, I'll link him in the description as well, but he's the original creator of a control deck called The Deck, and it used Thawing Glaciers, Kil'jaeden Outposts, Wrath of Gods, to keep the board clear, and Thawing Glaciers was one of the main card advantage engines in that deck. Now this was 96, 97, I believe, Magic. So there wasn't a lot of sources of card advantage. What Thawing Glaciers is effectively reading is that if you accept that every other turn your land drop is going to come in tapped, or you're going to be at 1 less mana than you were the previous turn. Every other turn, you get to draw a card. That card is Thawing Glaciers, because it'll bounce and you'll be able to replay it the following turn. So, what Thawing Glaciers allows me to do is that essentially I only have to draw every other a land for every other turn instead of every turn, and just being able to guarantee land drops in a control tempo shell like this is really in the position that we want to be. The drawback of it coming in tapped and not producing any mana on its own is pretty significant, but I'm sure you guys have witnessed how powerful this is when it's left unchecked. It is one shuffle effect, and it's a reason that I've been considering Brainstorm or Jace the Mind Sculptor, but I really don't want to run both of them or either of them with only one repeatable shuffle effect, essentially. Strip Mine, I don't have enough for Wasteland on MTGO currently, so I went with the better version of it. It's pretty cheap. I like this from the vault. It's actually one of my favorite arts for it. Uh, and this was significantly cheaper than the white border version, which I would have preferred to play. So Strip Mine deals with non-basics, or basics. Usually I'll try to avoid hitting basics if they're not a green deck, though. Just because if I can hit a green basic in a green X deck, they might not be able to cast ramp spells, which is definitely where I want to be. See the Synod? This is slightly more fragile than an island, but it's a strict upgrade, mostly because I can Tezzeret 0 for it. Where's Tezzeret? Tezzeret the Seeker, and I can -0 and guarantee a land drop. If I don't have the Crypt, and I don't really want it, because Tezzeret getting Chalice is a non-bow, but if I don't want to tick down Tezzeret and actually have him lose loyalty, I can still ramp a little bit for him. And it gives him 2 ramp pieces without actually losing loyalty, which is a good position to be in. Granted, I can always just get the Sol Ring for 1 loyalty, but having this in here isn't really that terrible. And when I do upgrade this deck a little bit further with Mox Opal, this will enable Metalcraft a lot better. Riptide Laboratory allows Vendilion Clique to dodge removal and be replayed without paying the commander tax each time. It also allows me to rebuy effects like Sower of Temptation, reset Glenalandra Archmage, rebuy Trinket Mage for Crypt into Ring or Ring into Crypt. It's a very efficient card at doing quite a lot of things, and its utility is only limited by the number of the different types of wizards that I have in my deck. Because of the fact that my commander is a wizard, it's worth the inclusion, especially in mono blue, where I'm not really hurting to draw blue sources. Reliquary Tower, I've been back and forth about this one in the deck. I'm not sure if it really pulls its weight. Usually we don't care too much about discarding, and I kind of feel like this, should I get Wasteland in the coming months, Reliquary Tower will be the cut for the Wasteland, because most of the time I'd rather this be a Wasteland than just giving me a niche utility of not having a max hand size. So generally, if I get a full hand of 7 cards, even if I picked up 9 for the turn, Reliquary Tower will still close out the game very quickly. Nykthos, the deck makes a lot of blue mana. We have a lot of blue things. Our commander adds 2 by itself, so Devotion is very useful for fueling out this deck. So the 0-drop artifacts, Everflowing Chalice. Generally, this will just turn into a Mind Stone. 2 mana, make something that taps for 1, but every now and then I'll turn it into a Hedron Archive. Sisay's Ring. There you go. 4 mana, taps for 2. It's just a useful artifact to have, and it scales well depending on how much mana I have. This gets the nod over something like Fractured Power Stone, which is in the same spot and was in the Plane Chase and allows you to roll the plane or die, which is not relevant, but it also taps for 1 mana, but it costs 2. Chalice is just strictly better than it, though, because Chalice can be played for more. Mana Crypt, you guys have seen how broken Mana Crypt is. I upload a lot of games with Mana Crypt to demonstrate how much of a problem this card is in the format. If this card got banned, I would be very happy to see it and Sol Ring go, and have games be less of a coin flip. Because if I open Mana Crypt into anything decent, I'm in just such a superior position. It's far worse than just 2 mana on turn 2, or 2 extra mana on turn 1. It's potentially Gilded Lotus 2 turns early, and then I'm at 5 mana up on turn 4, and that's more than double the amount of mana that I would have on turn 4, where I can be doing things like Future Sight, Tezzeret, and it just gets you to that late game faster, way faster than most decks want to. Mana Crypt and Sol Ring are the reasons, in my opinion, that Primeval Titan, Sylvan Primordial, Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn are banned cards in this format, because Primeval Titan on turn 6 is not broken. Primeval Titan on turn 4, it's pretty broken, or turn 3 potential. Like if you open Mana Crypt into Cultivate, you have Primeval Titan 2 turns away, which would be turn 3. And those are the types of things that make these cards so powerful. It's the fact that they get you to the late drops that are too powerful to come down early. Things like Future Sight are restricted by their mana cost, or let's see, Tezzeret or Glenalandra, they're balanced by the fact that they cost a lot of mana. These make those cards unbalanced, because suddenly Glenalandra only costs me 2 lands instead of 4 lands. Alright, so I've talked enough about them. Annul, Spell Pierce, Steel Sabotage are my 1-drop counter suite. I've played back and forth about including Force Spike here, that's why it's sitting right there, but I don't think it does enough. Annul really is in there to stop the Sol Ring Mana Crypts or the Sylvan Libraries if I'm on the draw. Steel Sabotage, stop these two. It has niche plays like I can bounce Winter Orb on end step before I untap. And Spell Pierce stops the same things, provided that they didn't open with Mana Crypt. And they're very efficient counter spells at what they do. So I have Curfew and Vapor Snag as bounce removal. I've actually been a big fan of Curfew. Each play, it's Innocent Blood, but it's bounce instead of sacrifice. So I can, if I have 4 mana, I can Curfew away their creature and then replay my Clique, get rebuy the activation on their end step, and potentially get rid of whatever creature I bounced off their board if I want to. Then I have removal at the 1 slot, Pongify, and Rapid Hybridization. I give them 3/3s, but those 3/3s do not fly, so I really can ignore them as much as I want. And my card selection here is Ponder, Preordain. And the reason I don't have Serum Visions here is it just costs a little bit more on MTGO because of Modern, and I'm really not interested in playing Serum Visions. I don't think it's a superior card. I would honestly probably decide for something like Peak, so I could know if Clique's a good hit on them, or Gitaxian Probe, which is currently 3 or so tickets online, or an exorbitantly high price for a common on MTGO. So I have 1-drop suite here, and this is my toolbox for Trinket Mage. I have the map to go get something like Strip Mine or Nykthos, Mana Vault, Sol Ring, they double as 2nd and 3rd copies of Mana Crypt, Relic for the graveyard decks, Pithing Needle for Planeswalkers, because I really don't want to spend my attack steps hitting Planeswalkers if I have the option not to. I mean I will, but I'd rather just kill them quickly with Vendilion Clique, and if I can keep a Planeswalker under a Needle for a little bit, usually Clique can close out that game. Relic for the graveyard shenanigans, and Sensei Stop was a new addition. I know I don't have the shuffle effects, but I was able to pick it up in a trade, and figured I would test it out some, and I've been very much enjoying it so far. I think I have a couple games up with it. 2-drops that are artifacts that don't cost any color. Cold Steel Heart and Sky Diamond are carbon copies of each other. Mind Stone and Thought Vessel are virtually the same. Mind Stone can cash in for a card, while Thought Vessel gives me infinite hand. It's the other reason I really don't feel like I need Reliquary Tower, because I have the Thought Vessel. Lightning Greaves and Runechanter's Pike round out my equipment package as the only equipment in the deck. Lightning Greaves, just to guarantee that I have haste if I have to play Clique on my own turn against, say, another blue deck. And Runechanter's Pike, you guys have seen a couple times, as well as seen me blunder with it quite badly, in the sense that I tried to tutor for it, cashed it in my Tezzeret, and didn't get Runechanter's Pike because it wasn't in the deck yet. So Runechanter's Pike just really accelerates that clock, and it can be a nice surprise kill out of nowhere by giving my Clique something like +6 or something. So, last 2-drop, Winter Orb. You guys have seen how powerful this card is. Get ahead on board, slam Winter Orb. Sometimes it's better than Damnation. Or, sorry, not Damnation, Armageddon. And if I have 2 or 3 counters in hand and I slam Winter Orb and I'm beating it with Clique, it's usually a guarantee. And I might do a whole video talking about Winter Orb in particular. But the way that it usually wins the games is you don't need to play Icy Manipulator in the deck. One of the guys at my local shop has been trying to slam Icy Manipulator into his Derevi list now that Winter Orb's been re-errated to it only works as long as it's untapped. You do not need Winter Orb. Icy Manipulator to combo with Winter Orb. Winter Orb is good on its own. You do not need to get a full untap because you don't slam Winter, because what's going to happen is you won't put the Winter Orb into play when you should, because you don't have the Manipulator. Winter Orb should be put into play when you are slightly in the head, you have a good untap, everyone else is tapped out, and it buys you time. And this deck, if it has a little bit of time, it closes out quickly, and that's why Winter Orb merits the inclusion here. Not to mention I can tutor for it off Tezzeret, Fabricate. I mean, if I get it off Tezzeret immediately, and then just start using Tezzeret to untap stuff like Mana Crypt Soulring, the game's going to end. So 2 drops. Alright, so we'll do the counters. Arcane Denial, Mana Leak, Memory Lapse, Miscalc, Negate, Counterspell, Mana Drain, and Muddle. So quite a lot of counters at the 2 mana slot, and the reason for this is I wanted to go lighter on the 3-drop slot because Clique comes down on turn 3 in a fair game. So I wanted to make sure when I have 2 mana up during their turn that I have something to do. And all of these cards give me that option. So Muddle obviously transmutes for Orb or Cyclonic Rift, typically one of those 2 cards. It can also go get the Mana Drain in a pinch, or the Standstill is my favorite addition recently. So the other 2 drops, Cyclonic Rift, Into the Royal, Merchant Scroll, Standstill, Legacy's Allure, and Withdraw. So, 2 bounce spells. Obviously, I love to overload the Rift when applicable, so this sort of sits between the 2 high slots, between the 2-drop and the 7 slot, which would be up here. And Into the Royal, it's efficient at what it does. It's effectively can read Pseudo Cryptic Command because you can bounce a non-land permanent and draw a card. But beyond that, it's just efficient at what it does. It gets rid of Planeswalker, Problem Enchantment, or Artifact, which the deck can't really deal with, short of bouncing. And so these are my 2 answers to something like a Mirari's Wake or a Phyrexian Arena. Compulsion is my somewhat Phyrexian Arena. Blue's got to work a little bit harder for that type of advantage, but when I have a bunch of mana open, I'm drawing a bunch of cards. I really don't need lands at a certain point, and getting rid of them, cashing them in on an opponent's end step for something else is a very effective method to try to win the game. Legacy's Allure. It's a 2-mana mind control effect, or control magic. That's the card I was looking for. I can put it on turn 2 and just let it keep ticking up, and it allows it's a really good threat for them. They want to bait it out first, but this deck cares so little about some effects or some creatures that a lot of creatures aren't very good bait for Legacy's Allure. Effective bait would be something that can block Clique or prevent me from winning, and that's when I would pop this off. So Withdraw, it's another cool cool bounce effect that can sometimes be a double unsummon. Return target creature to its owner's hand, return another target creature to its owner's hand unless they pay 1. It's a nice gotcha card. If they tap out, drop like a big 5/5 flyer into play, like a Baneslayer, or a 5 mana flyer. Baneslayer is a 4/4, I believe. But as first strike, Clique can't get through that, so I can withdraw that and something else. I've also used it to withdraw one of their creatures and my own Clique. You do actually have to have 2 targets. So if Clique is going to have to be one of your targets, make sure you have a 3rd mana up so you don't have to bounce Clique if you don't want to. Alright, and then Standstill. It's basically a 2-mana Ancestral. It's a very good draw spell, and it sort of falls in the same camp as Winter Orb, where if I'm ahead on board, my opponent has no option but to crack it. And it's in their best interest to crack it as soon as possible and try and not give me time. Now, if they're trying to get to lands, or if I have Winter Orb in play as well, I can understand not cracking it immediately, but it's just giving me more time to draw counter magic. And note, do not respond to standstill and counter the spell while standstill's on the stack. Draw the cards and then respond. 3 drops, Fabricate, gets Winter Orb, gets Sol Ring, gets Crypt, gets Top, gets Rune Chanter's Pike. Those are my primary targets for that. Needle and Relic are also very good targets for it because I need hates. Psionic Blast, this is my third piece of creature removal. My others are at 1, but this doesn't give them a creature, which is kind of nice sometimes. Sage Dowsing, a new counter. It's a actual wizard card, which I thought was pretty cool. Unfortunately, I can't Riptide it back to my hand, and keep playing Sage Dowsing if I had Riptide in play. That'd be pretty sweet. But it cycles itself, because I'll usually have Clique in play when I'm countering something. Other than that, it's just a 3 mana leak. Thirst for Knowledge, I play a lot of artifacts. So a instant draw 3 is in my favor, especially when I can throw away something like a Relic or a Pithing Needle against decks that I don't need it. Trinket Mage, I've talked about his toolbox before and all of the options he can get. Dissipate, Forbid, Hinder, and Spell Crumple round out my low-cost counter package. Dissipate, I found that Exile Removal is actually one of the best. Exiling counterspells are one of the best things right now, because I really don't like putting things in the graveyard. Hinder and Spell Crumple fall into that same camp. It's just they go to the bottom of the library. Every now and then, I will use Hinder to put it on top and effectively make Hinder into Memory Lapse if they're missing lands or something. And Spell Crumple recycles itself. There's cases where I'd rather have Spell Crumple go to the graveyard for something like my Rune Chanter's Pike, but the fact that it gets rid of the counterspell for good, or the spell that it counters for good, is too good not to play. And then Forbid, this is the reason to include something that gives me no max hand size, because Forbid by itself, if I can fuel it long enough, it's just going to let me take over the game. I don't care about throwing away 2 cards if I'm countering their only spell for the turn and killing them with Clique. And it's the same sort of thing as Force of Will, where even though you're getting a card disadvantage out of it, and Forbid's a pretty hefty card disadvantage, it's down 2 cards, and 3 mana. Well, you lose 2 cards, they lose 1 card, so it's a negative card. It's the same as Force of Will, except this costs mana to do it. Forbid can essentially lock the game and guarantee that I'm going to win if I have enough fuel for it in my hand and enough mana to maybe cast it twice a turn. Because Clique, if I can beat in maybe 2 turns with Clique, Forbid can usually keep me from losing at all costs. And Rune Chanter's Pike makes that a lot faster, and I can pitch away extra stuff that I don't need for it. So the 4 drops, we have a Factor Fiction. It's just a very efficient draw spell, which is why it merits an inclusion. I've considered this and Plea for Power, which is the voting time or knowledge, where you get an extra turn if you get more votes for time, or knowledge if knowledge gets more votes / is tied. You draw 3 cards. Factor Fiction, sometimes I get 3 cards, sometimes 2, but I like having the selection of the 5. Glendon Lounge Archmage, I've talked about it before. It combos with Riptide Laboratory, and it's very efficient beater. It's a fairy, it's a wizard. It does exactly what I want it to do, and it guarantees that I'm going to win counter wars at a certain point. Dismiss, the budget Factor Fiction, considering these are the 2 modes that Factor Fiction usually gets, is counter a spell, draw a card. You'll note that I don't have Cryptic Command in here right now. Did I say budget Factor Fiction? I might have. The budget Cryptic Command, and I do not have that card yet. It's pretty high on Moto still, and I'm not really interested in purchasing it. Rewind, there's some pretty cool plays with Rewind, beyond just being able to make sure that you rewind something and then have counters up for the next spell this turn. My favorite play is Rewind with like tap 4 islands, and I have a tap Thawing Glaciers, and then untap 3 islands and Thawing Glaciers, and then rethaw So let's say I have a bunch of lands and Thawing Glaciers up. I'll use Thawing Glaciers first, go get an island, and then with Rewind untap the Thawing Glaciers and get it used to get another island and essentially cheat 2 turns of Thawing Glaciers into 1 turn. Because Thawing Glaciers doesn't bounce to the end step, untapped shenanigans are very good with it. And then the other creature at the 4 is Sower of Temptation. If you saw my game against Brian Weissman on his channel, I wasn't able to upload a copy of my version of the game, the game from my end, unfortunately, I believe. So, other than that, Sower of Temptation is very good. I had it in my hand since the beginning of the game. It was quite a lot of fun. Knowing that I had that, I saw him play Azami, and then when it tapped into Glenelanja, I was like, alright, well, Sower's going to totally get him if he doesn't have anything. And sure enough, taking that Azami with Sower of Temptation, it was the perfect answer at that point. Beyond that, Sower is another control magic effect, like Legacy's Allure, that just gets things out of the way, which is what I really want. 5 drops, we have Desertion, and I've been very much enjoying Desertion. I'm sure you guys have seen me play it between back when this was the Rain deck and the Teferi version of the deck. It's just so good. Taking their Wormcoil Engine, Steel Hellkite, or something ridiculous that they're playing. Hell, I was playing this in real life at my shop the other day and countered an Ulamog with it and got an Ulamog of my own. Now, I didn't get the triggers, but I do have a 10/10 that exiles the top 20 cards of libraries. Mystic Confluence, the other counterspell that actually costs real mana. This is the budget cryptic command, or the other budget cryptic command, so to speak. You choose 3 modes. You can choose them more than once. It's Mana Leak, Unsummon, and draw a card. So your usual modes are Mana Leak, draw a card. But every now and then I like having a 5 mana triple bounce or something, or bounce draw, or bounce draw. The modal effect of this is very good. I've been very impressed with this counterspell. Tezzeret, I've talked about him a lot. He goes and gets any piece that we need, like Runechanter's Pike, Winter Orb, Mana, whatever have you. So the other reason I want to include Opal in this deck is because you can 0 and go get a blue source that is not your Seed of the Synod, if you need to. And, alright, so Future Sight, combos with Sensei's Divining Top. Essentially you top draw, so you tap the top, draw the top card of your deck, and then Future Sight lets you play the top off of it, so the combo effectively reads pay 1 mana, draw a card, because you pay 1 mana and put the top back on top of your deck, but you drew the other card off of the Future Sight. But beyond that, having a ton of mana off something like Nykthos lets Future Sight just take over games, and I've had opponents target things that they think are more threatening, like my Runechanter's Pike, or my Relic, or something else, when they or the Gilded Lotus, when they really should be targeting Future Sight. Like, I can have all the mana in the world, but if I'm Hellbent, and I have Gilded Lotus in play, and Future Sight in play, you destroy the Gilded Lotus. Or you don't destroy Gilded Lotus, you destroy Future Sight, because Future Sight has a better chance of me actually getting something to impact the game. Gilded Lotus, I still only get 1 card, but people just don't seem to accept Future Sight for the threat that it is, and it really was a pleasure to me. Flash of Insight, this is our last card selection, and it sort of goes in this like 1 to 2 slot because of the flashback. So it's 2 mana X, so look at the top X card, so I'll usually pay it for 1 or 2. I don't want to pay it for a lot. You get 1 and the rest go to the bottom, so it's Impulse, but not a very good Impulse. But the reason I have this over Impulse in the deck is the flashback, which is 1 blue X, and exile X blue cards from your graveyard. So because you get it twice is why I gave this the not over the Impulse. And the last card in the deck is Condescend, and it is the counter of X, Scry 2. It's really should slot in here at the 2s. Let's see. Right there. Because typically I'll be paying 1 for it, sometimes more. I've seen some people play it just on turn 1, like if the other opponent opens with like a Sylvan Library or something bust, or like a Soul Ring that automatically makes Condescend really bad because they have so much mana that they just cycle it to draw, or if not even cycle, they throw it away to be able to scry 2. And I'm not a fan of that play. I think I'd rather sit on the Condescend and just hope to get a spell out of it. So that's the deck, just under 30 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll be doing the Yisan soon. Now when I do the Yisan review in Deck Tech, I'm not going to be talking about the combo because I've talked about it in a few games already where I was able to demonstrate it. But that deck is far from complete, as is this one. This is the closer to being complete. The upgrades will be Mox Opal, Force of Will, Cryptic Command, Brainstorm, Fetch Lands. But the deck is quite low to the ground and quite a lot of fun to play. It's relatively budget, and if you have Vendilion Clique in your collection already, I highly recommend you give this deck a try. You will have quite a lot of fun with it, I guarantee it. Hope you guys had a good one. I will see you in the next one.